those that are in hell go to heaven for a very unpleasant experience, the great white throne judgment. We Christians will have nothing to do with that. So everyone goes to heaven. And I think that will make hell all the worse. When you've been there, you go to heaven, you see what that's like, and you go back into hell again. That'll make your suffering all the worse. And people will say, well, I don't want to go to heaven because all my friends are going to hell. We can have a good time down there. No, you don't understand. You don't understand the place of suffering that is. Bearing witness to what would be spoken by God in the future. But Christ is faithful as the Son over God's house, and we are his house, if indeed we hold firmly to our confidence and the hope in which we look glory. God is faithful. Jesus is faithful. He never turns his back on his children. He is totally faithful in what he has done in completing the ministry that God has called him to. And we are his house. We are the creation of Christ. It is in our lives that he lives through his Holy Spirit. And it is a wonderful thing. It is a beautiful thing. If indeed we hold firmly to our confidence and the hope in which we glory. Our confidence. And I need to give you a warning. There is a pervading false Christianity out there today. And it's scary. We're seeing one of the presidential candidates, and I'm going to name his name. I haven't done that in the past. Mayor Pete, who claims to be a Christian, but he's slamming evangelicals all over the place. And I'm thinking, how stupid can you be if you want to get to the White House by slamming evangelicals? You just lost 20, 30 million votes. And he started by slamming the vice president, who is a devout Christian man. And Mike Pence says, I don't get it. When I was governor of Indiana, we got along great. We worked together on a lot of projects. I don't know where this is coming from. And then the other day he says that evangelicals are going to have to pay for their sins. And then he says that anyone who denies that mankind is responsible for climate change, they are living in sin. Huh? Huh? What about anyone who denies an innocent child the right to life?
Amen. Amen.
They're not living in sin. He said God cannot approve of somebody that's against the environment. Well, does God approve of slaughtering babies? The cottage that I'm in most of the time, they just had a baby a month ago. And I've heard her crying a number of times. Well, this morning I saw her for the first time. Her daddy brought her out to get some milk. And I looked at her and she was just so tiny. She was only a month old. So tiny. And I said to her father, who is a Christian man, that is a miracle. That is a miracle how God has formed that and brought it to being. Somehow that if you're against climate change, you're a vile sinner, but if you slaughter innocent babies, that's okay. Huh?
He's off his meds.
What's up?
He must be off his medicine.
He's off his rocker. He's not going to get elected. And they keep saying that he's not getting a lot of support in the African American community. to say why he's not. I have a pretty good guess. It's because of his gay lifestyle. That is not something that is not prominently endorsed by the African American community. At least that's what I'm thinking. Because a lot of folks, and not everyone, are very involved in their church. I don't think that a lot of folks would just take a liking to that. So he's just doing a lot of things. Our world is so messed up. And when you hear these politicians say how they're going to save the world, don't believe it. Don't believe it. Because they can't do it by themselves. The only one who can save this world is God. The same God that George Washington prayed to on the very day of his inauguration as the first president of the United States. And do you know where that inauguration took place? The capital of the United States when Washington became president was New York City. Washington, D.C. did not exist. They had since moved out of Philadelphia. They were in New York City. Do you know where they went following the inauguration? To a church. The first act of the government of the United States was to have a prayer meeting. That is a fact.
Ground zero.
Do you know where that church is located?
Ground zero.
Ground zero. Right next to the Twin Towers. When those towers came down, buildings all around were destroyed. That church is still standing. You get down to Ground Zero and see the mass devastation. Even now you can go into the museum and see the photographs of the mass devastation. And that church is still there. I mentioned this when I was at First Baptist Church in Sharon in early July. And following the service, a woman came up to me and she says, have you ever been to that church? And I said, no. She says, well, I have, right after 9/11. And you can see, it still exists to this day, the chair that George Washington sat in when he called on God to bless this country. The chair still exists. It survived 9/11. Who was it that Abraham Lincoln turned to at the darkest days of the Civil War? He called for a national day of prayer and fasting. Imagine if the President of the United States today were to call for a national day of prayer and fasting. And I'm not just talking about our president now. It could be any president. It could be Democrat or Republican. If they were to call for a national day of prayer and fasting, they would be destroyed. Because that's not going to solve anything. And you see it now. Prayer really doesn't work. Prayer does work. Lives do get changed. Our God is an awesome God. Jesus Christ is superior. And it was the Spirit of Jesus Christ that protected that church when those twin towers came down. And you've all seen the pictures. The mass devastation. It literally took months and months to get that site cleaned up. And they had iron workers coming in there. I mean, big, bulky guys with all kinds of equipment. It still took a lot of time to clean that mess up. And what was it that they found in the midst of that rubble? A cross. An iron cross. A symbol that God was with us. I believe 9/11 was a warning from God that judgment is coming on this country. It's not just that some people did something. Are you kidding me? some 3,000 people died that day, including in a field, a farmer's field not too far from where we sit now, just a couple hours away in Somerset County. Jesus Christ is superior. We have the victory. And I'm going to let you off the hook early. And we start next week in the book of Job. Well, that'll be fun. That'll be fun. Well, thank you.
Thank you.